we talked about ease of doing business, the laws, then people, and what people does? People create values, irrespective of whatever or whichever sector or job he or she is having. So our next speaker would be talking about value creation. It's a very important topic, very important aspect. After learning about human resource and human resource, we are now venturing into value creation, how people can create value, especially in MSME business. So I would be requesting Mr. Vibhor Tandon, and a brief introduction about Mr. Vibhor Tandon. He's, as we all know, he is the Vice President of CMA. I'm a CMA veteran. He is a senior management professional with over 2 decades of experience in business development, financial markets, leadership, and strategic growth. He is currently director at Masa Accelerator Network and has earlier served in leadership roles with MCX, including as regional head for Eastern India. An alumnus of ISWBM, he brings deep insight into enterprise building, mindset, and market-driven growth. And he actively contributes to CMA's initiatives aimed at strengthening the management and MSME ecosystem. Apart from this, he is also basically the director at MMPL, which is known as Magical Mantras. And he's an independent director at INSD, which is known as International School of Design. And he's an advisor of IPCL. So a multifaceted personality. May I now request Mr. Vibhor Tandon to come forward and talk to us about how do we create value, especially with respect to MSME sector. But again, before handing over the podium to him, I would like to say that there's a challenge for Mr. Tandon, that he is standing between you and the lunch. Thank you.
Respected President, sir, dignitaries of the dais, our esteemed guests and dignitaries, our esteemed audience, the wonderful MSMEs who are the reason for today's conclave, and ladies and gentlemen, so it's actually a pleasure to address you at this moment with a little bit of issue with regard to delaying your lunch. Except for that, I think the rest of it is wonderful. So talking about value creation, right? Well, of course. Okay. So we'll not, of course, be taking too much of your time, considering that there is a small dearth of time today. But I'm sure as you know, you move deeper into understanding how value creation actually is a success code, I'm sure you will be forgetting a little more about the lunch and getting more into this. Now, talking about value creation, right? When we talk about value creation, we are not talking about the value-based business. We are talking about what is your brand, your organization associated with, right? Let us look at the broader perspective. Look at the entire world. Today, every country that you look at has something or the other, some anchor associated with it, some value that is associated with an organization, with a country as well. So today, if somebody visits Belgium, right, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Chocolates. The entire economy, tourism, everything around it is chocolates, right? Just based on one product, that entire country economy prospers, right? When you think about China, what is it that comes to your mind? You know, large-scale, low-cost manufacturing, machineries, factories. That is what you people think of. I will not talk about Thailand, obviously. Do not worry, right? What it is famous for. Of course, we are aware of that. When talking about India, what was the value that people used to think of in earlier times? A couple of decades, 3 decades ago, they used to think about spiritual renaissance, right? You're visiting India, you're visiting a particular country for spiritual renaissance, right? re-energizing yourself, spiritual elevation, moving on to a different direction, right? And you have scores and hundreds and thousands of people who are retiring or at the mid-age, mid-level crisis who were visiting India. Today, the world is different, right? You forget about visiting India. You probably are not aware of the number of expats who are looking forward to work in India, right? Couple of decades later, when we were young, of course, we used to have this stigma about studying abroad in foreign countries, right? Today, this stigma is dying out. A couple of decades later, there will be no such stigma. And I can assure you that today, being considered one of the largest economies in the world, which is the US, will not see the last couple of decades ever in its entire history, right? The last 2 decades were the best decades for them, right? And the decades which we are looking forward to, the country which we all look forward to is, of course, India, Bharat. Talking about value creation, right? The value that you create with respect to your organization is the reason why your organization should be valued, the reason why your organization should be looked at. The brand that you create is again based on the value that you create. It is not about the profits. Now, what is exactly the value paradigm, right? So, a blueprint, which is, of course, we are talking about relationship-driven growth. Now, whatever product, no matter what product you manufacture, no matter what service you sell, it is actually about the value that you create. So the time has come when you interact with your customers, when you interact with your stakeholders. So stakeholders is a better word today because even customers are stakeholders. Right? You have shareholders, you have customers, you have your associates, you have your partners, you have your vendors. Everybody is a stakeholder today, right? And the value that you create is actually deciding that what is it in store for the customer when you talk about your business. You are moving beyond transactional selling, right? To create sustainable business success. The market has shifted, right? And transactional sales is obsolete, right? And whenever I take a session on leadership, being it CSOs, CXOs, or CEOs, or even the successful upcoming startups, we talk about having a larger vision. If the vision is not a micro vision, if the vision is a macro vision, if the vision is much larger than yourself and your organization, is the only reason when you are actually able to reach the helm of growth, reach the top of the mountain, reach the topmost peak of success, right? And the market has shifted. So the vision cannot be, I will be 100 crore man. The organization will be 100 crore company. But the vision has to be, I will contribute towards a 5,000 crore economy, towards a 50,000 crore economy. I will create 5,000 jobs. I will ensure Viksit Bharat. That has to be the vision, right? Moving on to why the world has shifted and where it has shifted. Transactional sales, as it used to be, has moved on. The modern customer is more informed, right? So talking to them specifically about products, deep about products won't help much because it's all there. There is too much of information overload. More discerning and demands genuine value, right? Not a product pitch anymore. The product pitch perspective is slowly dying out. The traditional product-focused sales model is failing to build the loyalty because there are so many alternatives available on internet and Google and Flipkart and you don't know what, right? More focused. The focus is shifted largely to long-term growth, right? So traditional selling, which used to be semi-bold, right? Product-focused, pitch-oriented and short-term, has moved on. It has now shifted to the value paradigm, which is customer-focused, value-driven, relationship-oriented. So think about not the product you sell, but the value you create. The solution is a fundamental shift from selling products to co-creating value, right? Now, sales without selling, when I'm talking about creating value, I'm talking about MSMEs and how they're actually going to develop themselves. We are talking about selling without selling, right? And sales without selling, this is a paradigm which redefines the objective, right? The objective is not to actually sell a product, but to co-create value. The goal is not to close a single deal, but to become an indispensable partner, right? Indispensable partner by deeply understanding the challenges and advising on the solutions by collaborating, right? Today, when you pitch to a customer, when you talk to a customer, it can be a large industry, it can be individual, you say, we together can create this, and you become a partner to the organization. You become a partner to the client. You don't sell, you don't distinguish, you don't differentiate, right? So now, what is the pitch? Understand, advise, collaborate. Sales automatically happens, right? The blueprint, the 3 pillars of value paradigm. What are the 3 pillars? The core framework, right, is the value, the engine of value creation, right? The engine of value creation is when you are actually shifting to entirely talking about what value you create together with the customer as a collaborator, as a stakeholder, and it does not remain different with you anymore, right? Then there is a strategic alignment and organizational alignment. If I have a client who is a 100 crore or a 1,000 crore or a $1 billion company, and I am just a 1 crore company, I'm still talking about being a collaborator. I'm still talking about being a partner to that organization, right? Let us create this wonderful world together. Let us change the world ourselves. Let us make happier people. Let us make happier customers together. And you become a part and parcel of that organization along with what you do, right? I think you have to move a little back with the camera because I can see that, right? Now the third one I saw is masterful communication, which I call as power communication in some of the sessions which I take. This is the language of influence. There's a code of influence, a small paper which I have written, which probably at some point of time we'll talk about. But today we are talking about the language of influence, right? Let us understand it deeply more. The core framework, strategic alignment, and masterful communication. Pillar 1. Look at the pillar 1. We'll try to make it as short, as crisp as possible. And probably at another opportunity, we'll go into details. The core framework is a cycle of insight and collaboration, right? The pillar 1 is more about getting into insights, talking details, understanding, uncovering, and creating a collaboration, right? The first one is understand what, move beyond the service level, right? And surface level discovery, you move inside, right? Getting into the fundamental needs of the client, the strategic goals, and the most important one, which are not spoken, right? The unspoken challenges which are there with the client. The unspoken points. What is the most important thing in the conversation, my dear friends? It is not the ones which you talk about, but the ones which you are not talking about, right? The one which remains in the unconscious. That is what decides as to whether your sale, whether your collaboration, or whether your product deal is happening or not. Your mega deal is happening or not, right? And you know, can you guess how much of time the customer normally takes to decide whether the deal will be happening or not? Any guesses? Half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 week, 2 weeks? How many? The first couple of minutes, right? The first couple of minutes, right? So you can understand how important value creation is. So understanding, second is advising. You become an advisor, you become a strategic partner. You don't become a salesperson, you don't become a vendor, you don't become a supplier anymore. You become a strategic partner, provide insight, data-driven recommendations as if you are consulting the client, genuine solutions which address the core challenges, right? Collaboration, the third one, of course, is work together as a unified team. Together, let us create the next generation of this particular equipment, right? The unbelievable next generation. Work together as a unified team. Co-create solutions, implementation plans to ensure there is mutual investment. Why mutual investment? The customer is investing money. You are investing your expertise. You are investing your time there, right? And ensuring that you have shared success. The pillar 2 is strategy must underpin the system, right? And as you see here, right, you have input, the customer need, and output, right? Not yet patented this, so you can probably take some pictures, but this might go for a patent, and after which, of course, you will need some approvals for that, right? this particular model, right, which has been created. Now, individual excellence is not enough today. You selling yourself is not enough today, right? Why is it? What is the difference between the way a larger organization head addresses the company and you address, or a small organization addresses the company? You talk about I, right? When you look at organizations such as the Tata, the Reliance, the Google, they say we. And that is what I call the power of we, right? And why? Because it is a system that they talk about. It is not talking about themselves. And as already mentioned here, the individual excellence is not enough. To deliver consistent value, the entire organization must be aligned around the customer, right? My organization, or we, will work together around your needs to ensure that we together co-create a successful working environment for the entire world. And that can be one pitch for an HR organization, right? So now, that requires a strategy scaffolding that connects internal functions to external outcomes, right? Critical frameworks provide the structure. The input, which is the customer need, and the output, which is again, value. The value that you create. Orchestrating your internal elements. So let us look at the McKinsey's 7S framework, right? McKinsey, we have all heard about, we have talked about, we have studied. There is the 7S framework, and we were hearing some of it today earlier. The 7S model, as we see here, and we are talking about shared values once again, right? It's strategy, structure, systems, skills, style, staff. Everything is talking about value. Your strategy focuses on value. Your structure is focusing on value. The systems that you create is on overall developing the value and not around how much of business you can procure through that. And even the staff is focusing on the same. The 7S model is an internal compass to ensure every element of your organization is aligned to deliver superior customer value, right? And again, understand, advise, collaborate model. Focusing resources on high value opportunities with the BCG growth matrix. Again, talking about Boston Consulting Group, right? Talking about the approach, one of the international, all of us are fascinated about, these models, and let us recreate, let us actually integrate these models with what we are talking about today. Focusing on resources on high value opportunities with the BCG share matrix, growth share matrix. Strategic alignment, right? And strategic alignment also means managing your portfolio effectively. The BCG matrix is actually helping you identify where to invest resources, right? To maximize growth and deliver the value to the right customers, right? Let us look at the markets as an organization, as an MSME, as an organization which is growing, which aspires to be the top, right? Look at the market growth. This is something which is often talked about in the HR perspectives, the stars, the question marks, the dogs and cash cows. Customers, right? Your segments, your partners, which are your question marks? The ones who are standing in between, can be on either side, right? The stars are already performing to a large extent. Dogs, not with, not really disrespecting anybody, but when you're talking about dogs, low growth and low share customer partners. Cash flow, low growth, but still high share, right? Consistently. Allocating your resources. We advise, or I advise, allocating your resources justifiably would mean that, of course, most of your resources will go into the question marks because they can go either way. You need to have 20% of the resources towards the stars, right? 50% either here or there, ya to is taraf ya us taraf. Probably most of your resources can go into that, right? 10% ensuring that dogs move on to the question marks level, right? And of course, ensuring that 1/3 of your resources go into cash cows. They are getting you the required money as well. Pillar 3, masterful communication. Now, each of these slides is actually a 6-day or 8-day workshop. I would say a 6 hours to 8 hours workshop. Each of these slides is a 6 to 8 hours workshop, right? That is how this model has been created. As I said, you can take pictures now, but it is going for patenting very soon. So pillar 3, masterful communications is currency of value. The currency of value, right? The value that you talk about, there is a currency. and the masterful communication is the currency in which you are creating value. The entire blueprint is activated through masterful communication, right? It's not about what you say, right? Not about what you say at all. So what percentage of your communication in your whole life is verbal? Any guesses? What percentage of your communication in your whole life is verbal? Guess. Verbal, 85%, 90%? Anybody? She's saying 10%. 20%. So verbal is just 5%. 95% is non-verbal. Just imagine how much of time we have wasted talking to people. Right. Moving on to the blueprint. Yes, not what you say, but how you listen. The best and the most successful of the salespeople are the ones, most successful of businessmen, most successful of companies are the ones who listen the best, right? Not speak the best. How do you connect? There is something called an unconscious rapport because there is less of verbal communication and influence, right? This is about reframing the customer's mind from what is the cost to what is the value, right? So we are just moving on to the next slide, which again, as I mentioned, each of this has intricate details behind it. Understanding will take a lot of time. Getting into uncovering latent needs through a deeper dialogue. The dialogue that you have today, right? Right? It is basically talking about covering latent needs, the ones which are not talked about. The customer doesn't tell you about that initially. You talk about it. And the customer says, you're right, this is what I want exactly, right? And it automatically happens. And how does it happen? See, the foundation of influence, right, is genuine understanding. Genuine understanding means influence, right? This requires moving beyond superficial conversation to what is said and what is not. So first it is active listening, right? Asking open-ended questions when you're talking to the customer, and you can see that big iceberg or the big mountain, which that huge rock, and large part of it remains, I would say more than 2/3 remains underground, right? There are explicit needs and stated problems which are there on the top. But underneath that is the latent needs, the unspoken goals, and the core motivations, why he's doing what he's doing, right? So lastly, you clarify and confirm. Clarify and confirm what? Something which was not spoken, right? And it demonstrates that you have totally understood, right? So isn't it wonderful? Wonderful framework, isn't it? Yeah. So building subconscious trust and influence with advanced techniques. So now let us move on to psychology a little bit. We have talked about value, talked about economy. Let us talk a little bit about psychology now. Basically integrating psychology now with the value creation. Beyond the fundamentals, the expert communication are principles of neuro-linguistic programming, right? And the Milton model. Some of you would have heard about the Milton model, right? And it builds actually deep subconscious rapport and guides the conversations constructively, right? Matching and mirroring is, of course, ensuring that you have an unconscious rapport which is created. Then there is anchoring, creating an anchor, right? You have, how many of you have felt that smell that comes to that you feel in your nose and takes you back to 50 years back? The smell of a particular flower. For me, I was walking through a forest and Chatim Gach, the fool, the flower, that took me back 35 years back, right? So anchors, that is how anchors are created, right? Embedded commands. The embedded commands is something which I'm very, very scared of talking too much about, because understanding that people can use it, they can misuse it, but embedded commands can be used, right? And using sophisticated language, like as long as you begin to see the real value, make a decision that fits, right? So you are seeing the real value. There is a cause and effect Milton model which is already there. See, when I started the conversation, I said, as you understand and get deeper into understanding the value creation, you will keep forgetting more about lunch, right? How many of you remember lunch now? Some of you, yes, of course. But the hunger has probably gone slightly deeper inside. Using of the VAK model, the Milton model, which says What is VAK? Most of us have heard about it. It is talking about the submodalities. It can be visual, it can be auditory, it can be kinesthetic, right? Identifying the kind of model which the client or the customer or your partner is more comfortable and ensuring you are in it. So the tangible ROI of building relationships. What is the tangible ROI of building relationships? Right? There is a return of investment. There is a return on investment in building relationships. Adopting the value paradigm, right? So somebody told me, if you have many number of people taking photographs of your presentation, it means the presentation is successful. So I have that feeling now, because I see a lot of you doing that, right? So yes, the adopting the value paradigm isn't just a philosophical shift. It is not a philosophical shift. I'm creating value, I'm creating value, I'm creating value. No, it is actually a tangible shift. You have tangible ROIs against that. It delivers measurable business results, systematically understanding needs and fostering relationships. So what does it give you? Increased customer loyalty, increased retention, improves customer satisfaction, sustainable, predictable revenue growth, and enhanced partner status. You become a partner with that person. So some of these cases, if you remember, some of the organizations start talking about, we have partnered with him or them for doing this. And that becomes a USP, right? You become that partner. The blueprint in action, right? From theory to now market leadership. The global leaders have already made the shift. What are you waiting for? Everybody has made the shift, right? By prioritizing co-creation of value over traditional sales. So we are looking at some examples, like whether you look at the Salesforce or GSW, they all have used cases of this, which is of course part of the paper, which the patent which will be written on this, right? It actually focuses on solving complex business problems, right, using AI, etc. Leverages powerful customer success stories to highlight tangible value and ROI. So there is tangible value and ROI happening. It is not philosophy, right? Drives partnerships by focusing on high value, strategic solutions like energy efficiency, and we're talking about GSW now, right? And sustainability in steel production. So this is a bit about value creation, the success code, the architectural principles. The last slide we'll take through is your foundation is trust, not transactions, right? You're focusing on trust, not transactions. Your structure is value, not products. Your tools are collaboration and insight and nothing else. So let us begin your value paradigm today, right? Assess and honestly evaluate your current approach, pinpoint specific areas of improvement, and start building deeper relationships. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed and it was not boring. So any questions or any comments I would like to, please, sir.
Now I'm coming to a car, point A to point B. It takes you in luxury. Tomorrow I'll create a contraption, take it right onto that roof, park it there, which I may call crone or something else. It'll take you in 5 minutes to a place where you go in 50 minutes at a lot more expense. Now, don't you think this is going to happen? Thank you.
Excellent. Great. Right, any other questions? Any comments? How does everybody feel? Good? Thank you so much. Wish you all the best in your journey to value creation. All the best.
Thank you, Mr. Tandon, for an insightful presentation. Excellent one, I would say. Request you to be here. See, Mr. Tandon has spoke about certain things like co-creation. How do you co-create value? Value is a very large term, so it is easier said than done or create. Second is he talked about partnering. How do we ensure partnering with our customers or clients? Customer discovery. So customer discovery, he talked about communication as well. So in order to do customer discovery, we need to do discovery listening. Unless we listen to the customer and find out what is his exact needs, we won't be able to fulfill them and cannot create value. And mind one more thing, is that value creation is not only for self or for the organization. Value creation is also for the entire stakeholders, because we operate both in external environment as well as in internal environment. So whatever number of stakeholders are there in both these environments, we need to create value for them. And that's what we call as value chain. He also spoke about shared success, very important. Celebrating and sharing success. Extremely important point what he said. Strategy must underpin the success. Again, a reminder to all of us, irrespective of any form of business. So very important points he has touched upon. He spoke about two major models, McKinsey 7S and BCG growth matrix. I'm sure next time he would be incorporating Porter's 5 forces as well, because that is also equally important, because we cannot work in isolation. We work with competition, irrespective of MSME or non-MSME. So that also has to be kept in mind. Nonetheless, once again, a big hand for Mr. Tandon. And now I would request the treasurer of CMA, Ms. Sohini Gooptu, to come forward at the dais and felicitate Mr. Tandon for a magnificent presentation.